Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having a good week. So today I'm going to be talking more about what it's really like to work in the mental health field. I know that that's definitely an interest of the people who watch my videos because I would say the number one thing that I get questions about is going to school for mental health, what the career outlook is, Pepperdine, all of that. And since now I am actually working in the field and kind of have more perspective on that, I wanted to share what I've learned with you. Apologize for the weird glare. It has just been very sunny every day that I film, which isn't great for lighting, but it is great for mental health. Anyway, this video is not meant to discourage anyone from going into the field, but I do want to put a disclaimer. I am going to be talking about a lot of the cons because mostly those were the things that I wasn't aware of before I chose this. And I do think that because of the seriousness of what you're working with and the fact that you're working directly with people, I do think that you really have to be passionate about this because your bad day could significantly affect someone. And so it is extremely important that you're actually wanting to be in this field and wanting to do the work that you are going to be required to do. That being said, I think I'm going to share a lot of important information that'll just kind of help you make a more informed decision. So the first thing that I feel like isn't completely transparent or maybe just not very well advertised is the schooling process. The schooling process is very lengthy. I mean, it depends. Most master's programs are 2 to 3 years. And then if you want to go on for your PhD, it's like another, I think it's like 4 or 5 years total. And psychiatrists, it's 8 years or something because you have to go to medical school as well. So I guess if you're just trying to get your master's in clinical mental health counseling or clinical psychology, any of that, it probably is only a 2 to 3 year program. Obviously that's after you have gotten your bachelor's degree already. I'm sure it depends on the program, but I'm pretty sure that for most programs you don't have to have a background in psychology or anything. You can apply for a counseling master's program without having that. Most of the time I would say that probably extends the time of the program slightly just because I got some classes waived because I had already taken them in my undergrad, so that took off an entire semester for me. However, if you did go to school in your undergrad for psychology, your master's is extremely repetitive. It's going to be a lot of classes that you already took, maybe just slightly more in depth. There's also a lot of classes that you have to take that don't make sense for you to be required to take them, more specialized classes. There's also the practicum that you have to do, which is an internship. It's typically only part-time hours, but depending on your program, you might have to also take classes on top of that, which can become a lot. It's very, very time consuming. And then after you graduate, there is the licensure process. Now I'm pursuing an LPC licensure, eventually LCPC, and the process is different per state, but essentially after you graduate in every state, I'm pretty sure, you first have to take one licensure test to get the very first license. So for Illinois, it would be the LPC. Once you pass that test, you still have to work for 3,000 hours, supervised hours. So essentially that just means you have a supervisor. You can't have an independent practice. You are also typically getting paid less than a licensed therapist would get paid. How much less is very dependent. I work at a nonprofit agency, so I would say the amount I'm getting paid less is not that significant. However, you're typically going to get lower pay in general at such agencies. If you work at a private practice, they could expect to take up to 50% of whatever you're making for to supervise you. I know that you're also sometimes able to just find a random supervisor. If you work at an agency that maybe can't provide you one, you can find a supervisor, but a lot of those are very expensive too. They can get to $250, $300 for an hour, and that's per week that you're paying. So that's a little frustrating. It gets pretty long, that time period. And then after that, you have to take another exam, before you can become independently licensed. And then after that, like most degrees, you do have to take like continuing education classes to maintain your license. But yeah, I feel like that's required for most degrees or certifications and stuff. As I said, the schooling part could probably have been cut in half with the amount of information that we were taught, because half of it, throw it out the window. It's irrelevant. And I'm not trying to be negative, but I also I want to be realistic about the fact that most of the theories and like random modalities that are so old that you're probably never going to use them, they're just not applicable to actually working in the field. And because every client that you have is going to be different, like even if you have a client that comes in suffering from the same disorder, the same symptoms as another one, you're not going to treat them the same way. And I definitely see the benefit of having like a supervisor or consultant of some sort. But I think that that's something that can benefit you your whole life. I don't think it should necessarily be something that's like, oh, we're going to require this of you and then make you take all of this time and spend all this money to get here. Especially because, which brings me to the next point, the pay is not that great. So I think that with most jobs that require extensive training, like doctors or engineers or lawyers, once you get out, you get paid a decent amount. Whereas with therapy, you really don't. And that's not to say that if you become a psychiatrist or if you get that PhD and become a psychologist, those are things that automatically boost up your pay. And there are people who do make good money in the field. However, it's a question of, does the pay match the amount of training and experience that you have? I think that unfortunately the mental health field is still a little bit taboo, or I still think there's a lot of people out there who just don't think that it's a real thing. But it is tough because if you're working for an agency, like I said, typically the pay is lower. If you're working for a private practice, the pay can be higher, but you're also probably not getting benefits. And even if you open up your own private practice, it costs so much money to keep it running that the amount you're taking home is not that much more than if you worked for an agency. Where people do get into more money is when they have a private practice and they have other people working under them. If it's fully licensed clinicians, typically they still take like a cut of the profit just because it's their practice. But if it's still unlicensed clinicians, then you're getting that money from them for supervision. Another like personal bone to pick that I have with the process is I feel like you have to be very business minded to be able to open a private practice, because it is a business. And I just know that that is not my thing. I mean, I'm in therapy. I intentionally did not go for business. And I think that where my biggest struggle lies with the pay being so low is mainly because of how expensive education is today. And when the pay is not enough that you're not even able to make your minimum student loan payments and you're forced to enroll in one of the, repay programs, I think that that's when we should start noticing like there's kind of a problem there. Another thing is that the scheduling can be a little tricky, especially because most people work 9 to 5 days, right? And so when they're coming to therapy, especially if it's something that's weekly, it can oftentimes be on off hours. I know my agency mainly works with kids, so most of the people who work there work like 11 to 7, or sometimes even until like 8. And I think that's sometimes things people don't think about when they're going into this field of like the hours that they'll most likely be required to work. I think it's important to acknowledge is that because of the schooling, extensive training, licensure process, like the stress of that, the pay, the hours, all of this, burnout is fairly common. I have to say that I'm very fortunate because the company I work at really strongly encourages self-care and trying to prevent burnout. That being said, it still can happen because the nature of the job is very difficult, and then when you add on kind of all these other stressors, it's very easy to get to a place of forgetting maybe why you're doing this and struggling to get by. I think also as therapists, we have to be empathetic, right? So most of the issues that clients are dealing with, we're kind of taking them on ourselves. I will say, like, after a while, you do somewhat learn how to separate that, like walk away from a session and not take it with you. But I think that that is something that's important for you to consider if you're wanting to go into this field, is how well are you at managing stress? You know, are you able to prioritize self-care? So those are some of the main points that I wanted to discuss, because I do want to be real and honest about my experiences and what I've learned, so that other people can have access to that knowledge as well. As I said, a lot of these things I don't feel like were very transparent, well advertised, or just some things, like I said, that I just didn't think about. However, I am still glad that I'm in this field. I'm happy with where I work, and I'm happy with where I ended up. I maybe would have done some things differently as far as schooling goes, mainly not going to Pepperdine, but I've spent enough time focusing on regrets or mistakes, and so I think I'm just really trying to focus on the now and where I am. If you guys have more questions about working in the mental health field or anything like that, please put them in the comments below. And I hope that you found this video helpful or insightful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos, please hit that subscribe button below. I'm always open to video suggestions as well, so if there's anything that you specifically want me to elaborate more on, let me know. But thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye.